Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Bobby Piton here with Preactive Investments. And I just want to go over a few things going on, not just with, I guess, the financial news, but some of economic news that could impact every single one of us as Americans, especially when it comes to our money. Because part of this whole thing with Preactive Investments is I'm trying to get people to start living their values, putting their money to work in things that make sense for their values and their beliefs, that they don't support companies and do things that undermine our belief system. And, I do think it starts with everything we do. The decisions we make when we go purchase things at businesses, as well as how we deploy our capital. All these things are all tied together, and they're extremely important. And so, with that being said, there's a few things I want to kind of hit on that are making the headlines today, which I think are pretty important that everybody should be thinking about. I did a post earlier about how the country, about 270 million Americans, about 90% of the country. I think the census data is off. I think they're lying to us. So I'm using a 300 million number, and at some point I will prove it out once we get this voter integrity stuff done. But let's just assume there's 270 million Americans that are worth about $13 trillion. That's the number. So about 270 million people in this country are worth 13 trillion. Now, last week, Bolshevik Biden, because that's what he is, he's a Bolshevik who's trying to shove communism down our throats. He's saying that the budget's going to be 6 trillion. Now, keep in mind, folks, there's about 130 million, say 125 to 130 million people working full-time equivalents in the United States right now. Don't believe me? Go to BLS.gov. That's the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and see for yourself. So, $6 trillion with 130 million people working, right, is the equivalent of about $22 per hour worked for each worker in this country is how much the government wants to spend. $22 per worker per hour, day in, day out, every single hour in this country in the next year. It's absolutely insane. It's outrageous. The federal government used to be 4 cents out of every dollar of the economy. To give you an idea of how much that would be $800 billion a year instead of 6 trillion. So that would be 800 billion versus 6 trillion if we were spending as much money as we once did in this country. The federal government needs to be cut in half, and even then it would still be 4 times as big as it was. Okay, 4 times as big as it was 100 years ago if we cut the federal government in half. Okay, this has gone insane, and here's the next play that they're doing. And so you got to remember that with regards to deficit spending, the Bolshevik Biden and these corrupt politicians in D.C. are talking about spending $1.3 trillion per year for the next 10 years in deficit spending. Folks, that's 1.3 times 10 is 13 trillion. I'm telling you that number because $13 trillion is how much 270 million Americans are worth. So the net worth, the equity of the American people within 10 years, if we let this lunacy and this theft take place, they're going to steal the entire net worth of the entire country. They're going to steal it by putting on debt. That's what they're literally trying to do. It's called a leverage buyout. They're trying to shackle the American people with all this debt, so they put pressure on them to get wiped out. And so this is what we are up against. We have to get this voter stuff done. I'm working on it. I have 4 people now on my team, including Edward Solomon. Check out the video. We had a wonderful time talking about findings that he had in Michigan and things that I have. And we're going to work on Arizona and New Hampshire today. I owe somebody a call when the markets are closed about New Hampshire. And so we're going to work on that. I have a couple other people doing other stuff with data. But I'm telling you all this because we're just only beginning. This is like the first inning. Once we get this voter stuff figured out and we prove how widespread the fraud was everywhere, We need to take our communities back one at a time. 7,000 corrupt officials probably out there. I don't know if all 7,000 are corrupt. Maybe there's 700 that are something, that are worthwhile. Maybe it's 1,500. But what I do know, it's definitely more than 60%. So I would think there's over 4,000 corrupt government officials running this country into the ground. 300 million Americans are being screwed by 4,000 people. Think about that for a second. 4,000 corrupt officials across all levels of government are screwing through 300 million of us. Big time. They sold us out, and we need to get this fixed. And we need to vote out all the scumbags that are doing this. Okay? And so I'm telling you this because you should be nervous, and you should be involved, and you should be worried about it. And one of the most immediate things that you can do to take this country back is find out what your property tax rates are. And as property taxes have gone up in this country 12 to 20% in the past year, and if your property taxes were 2.5%, and now all of a sudden your property went up by 12 to 20, don't let them steal that money from you. The gain in the property should be yours. You should organize across your county, okay, 3,000 counties. Get involved and figure out how to organize people to lobby, petition the government to cut the property tax rate. The windfall should not be the government's. If property went up, if a house went from being worth 200 to 240, that the government shouldn't get the extra 2.5% on the 40,000. Take it down. Say, you know what? We're going to cut the property taxes 15% across the board. That's what we need to do. We need to shrink the damn tax rates if the value of our assets are going up on the housing front. Please look into that. If we start doing those simple things, we'll start to take our damn money back. Those gains are ours, not politicians. You don't want to let 7,000 people have a spending orgy with our freaking money because property values have gone up in this country. We need to take it back, and we need to start immediately. So that's one of the most immediate things you can do. The other thing you need to do is find out how communities are trying to weaponize the housing structure. They're trying to, some very corrupt Bolsheviks are trying to put in housing across communities that are conservative in the form of apartment buildings. This is the pitch. The pitch is we need more low-income housing over here so we can take control of all your assets in this community. That's what they're doing. They put it on the peripheral of the city, and you need to get involved and make sure that you veto and vote against any of this stuff. Vote for politicians that vocally are opposed to any type of these housing schemes to take control of our communities across the country. I can't stress it enough. I post about it on Telegram. Follow me on Telegram. I'm trying to write some of this stuff out so that people know to start thinking about it and where to look into it. So please look into it. This is very serious stuff. They're moving as fast as they can, okay? And if we don't work to fix this, they're weaponizing our democracy against us, folks. They're weaponizing our democracy against us. You got to do something about it. In terms of, let me see here. So let's talk about the markets now. That's just a couple big highlights with regards to your money. Your money, get the damn property taxes cut, and make sure that you make sure your community isn't hijacked by these evil people that are trying to put in housing so that they can try to take control of your neighborhood by stacking them up with a bunch of illegals as well as immigrants from that are here, like refugees. This is what the refugee program is about, folks. It's not about helping these people. It's about spiking the voter rolls. Look into it and see for yourself. Okay, that's that. What I do think is pretty crazy is the WHO. A very corrupt organization, as far as I'm concerned, wants to try to raise $50 billion. I wonder who's going to get that money. How much is going to be skimmed of that $50 billion? What's the purpose of that $50 billion? Each country should be responsible for their own damn stuff, and we shouldn't be using these corrupt organizations, the World Bank and the IMF and the WHO, all trying to raise more money to pay more Bolsheviks to try to tell people how to live their life. I think enough is enough. We need to cut them off as quickly as possible. So that's very concerning that this money is going on. Look, the green beans and this horrific green agenda. There was a cyber attack that shut down meat plants. And we'll see how many meat plants are shut down. They can't convince us to give up eating meat, so they want to try to, they're weaponizing probably groups around the world to attack the facilities of companies that are feeding us. I'm not going to eat, like personally, soy has a horrific impact on my health. I can't speak for anybody else, but they're putting soy into everything. They put it into bread and ice cream and, you name it, they put soy into it. Folks, look into it for yourself. I can tell you right now, it's getting harder and harder for me to eat. They're literally trying to starve me out, so to speak. They don't want me to eat anything because they're putting soy into everything. So unless I create, we make our own meals, it's very, very hard for me to eat out. Uncle Downer, I'm not a soy boy. I think soy is actually meant to control populations personally. I think it raises the estrogen level in men as well. So I'm not even talking about the impact on me. I think it's somehow interacting with the cobalt and chromium I have in my body from a hip surgery that I had. But soy is a serious thing to look into. Once again, I am not a doctor. I'm not saying I'm a doctor. I'm saying it's worth looking into for yourself. I just happen to know personally it has a very bad effect on me on a personal level. And if you feel run down or you feel like you're 100%, pay attention to what you're eating, folks. Look at the ingredients in this stuff, and there's like micro levels of a bunch of different things that might be impacting your physical well-being, your mental health, causing you brain fog, all these types of things. Everybody should look into it for themselves. We all need to take responsibility for our own health, because I got to tell you, these government agencies, it seems as though they haven't really been doing their job, or they fell asleep at the switch, or who knows, maybe some of them are in on it. I have no idea. I'm just saying that you have to take responsibility. You have to be an American. That's it. I mean, you are an American. Act like it. Take responsibility for your own health. Look into all this information on your own. Research it. Take control of your family's health. Don't trust, trust but verify. Do what Ronald Reagan said, right? And even the stuff that I'm telling you, you know what? You're never going to hurt my feelings. Bobby, I heard you say this. I went and looked at it. Something was slightly off. Correct me. I'm telling you, I go off of information that I'm given. I do my best efforts, and I do dig and look into things in great detail. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to make a couple mistakes, and I don't mind being called out on it if I did make a mistake in something I said. But what I would tell you is, don't believe me on some of this stuff. Look into it for yourself. And then you don't believe me, look into it for yourself. You might get very angry at first because you're going to be like, wow, that Bobby found a lot of crazy stuff. Go look at the source material on some of this stuff. It's extremely disturbing. But anyways, they can't get their way. They shut down our way of living. They remember that crazy woman from New York, AOC. She said we were going to get rid of all the planes. And guess what? All of a sudden, the virus hits a year later, and they almost got rid of all the damn planes, right? Everything shut down in the airports. It fell 90%. And who knows how many planes they took offline permanently because of this. But, these people are using our economic system in a very devious and weaponized manner against us. So if we don't start learning in greater detail how our economic system works and how all these different types of companies and industries relate, we're going to get our butts handed to us. That's all I can say. This is one of the reasons why I do a lot of these videos, is I'm trying to help bring people up to speed and understand what's going on in the economy and how these things interrelate, because they're going to have a massive impact on our lives for the foreseeable future. And I from everything I'm seeing, it looks as though it's getting worse, right? So it makes me extremely nervous, because I'm trying to go as fast as I can to explain this stuff. And I've added a couple people, obviously for my company. I've added some people on the voter integrity stuff. So I'm trying, folks. I'm trying to keep going and get this out there as much as I can. So what I would say is, what else? What I wanted to point out that's important for everybody to think about. Let me see here. Oh, oil prices have really shot up. You know, I think oil's back over $70 a barrel, $71 a barrel, folks. It was, what oil was a year at the start of the year. So to give you an idea, you look at, USO is an ETF that's a proxy, United States Oil Fund. Now this isn't exact. This is just a proxy, but oil was this USO fund at the beginning of the year was about, let me see here, it was about $33, and now it's 46. Now, give you some perspective. A year ago, June 1st, a year ago, it was $26. So USO was $26 a year ago. Now it's 46. Now keep in mind, this is a proxy for oil prices, but oil prices have really moved up quite a bit in the past year. Once again, all of our commodities prices have been going up across the board, and yet the government's saying inflation's only about 2.5% or so. And so this is why, folks, monetary policy should be set by the people, not the Federal Reserve. The American people should dictate the value of our money. If I'm going to go to this next point, with regards to that 1.3 trillion they want to spend per year for the next decade, that comes out to $5 every hour every person in this country works every day for the next 10 years. That's how much debt they want to add on to each hour we work. So I want you to imagine that every hour you work, they tack on $5 of debt to kind of hold you down. Who would agree to that, folks? Who would agree to that type of lunacy? Well, this is what the government is proposing, because we aren't as involved as we need to be. We're getting there. I feel a tremendous amount of momentum shifting, and I do believe that there's a tremendous amount of patriots that are mobilizing and getting involved with all this stuff, with voter integrity, getting involved. We need to take our school boards back and everything else. But I do think that even with all that, we need to dial it up even more. We need to put pressure on this as though our lives depend on it, and our families' lives and our grandchildren, because they do. So, I said this before, I'll say it again. If every American, I think it was actually only 100 million Americans donated 6 hours of time a year to charitable causes, right? 6 hours a year. That would be the equivalent. Hold on, let me think about this for a second. If the average person is 2,000 hours of work a year, 2,000 hours. So then if you took 2,000 hours times a million, okay, that's 2 billion hours. So then, times 100 million is 200 billion. So 200 billion hours is how much 100 million people work. 200 billion hours. Okay, so 200 billion hours. If we each spent, we donated, 1,000th of that time, just 1,000th of that 200 billion hours that we work. You're talking about 1,000 goes into 1,000 goes into a billion. It turns into a million. So 2 billion would be 2 million hours. So 2 million hours of time is one. If we donated 1,000th of our time as a nation, 2 million hours. Okay, if you divide that number, 2 million hours by 2,000 hours, then all of a sudden, what are you at? You're at what are we at? 2,000 into a million. Hold on a second. So 2,000 is 50 times 500, 50. Hold on. So 50 people times 10. Hold on a second. Drawing a blank here. 1,000 goes into a million 1,000 times. Okay. So 1,000 times 1,000 is a million. So 1,000 people times 2 is 2,000 full-time people for each 1/1,000th of time that people donate. That's what it comes out to. So we can solve this problem by just getting people to to consciously just donate a little bit of time. We have plenty of people to solve it. What I'm trying to do is use actionable data. I'm trying to get actionable things to do with the data to get people involved. So anyways, that's the deal, folks. But please look into some of these things that I'm talking about. Look at the property taxes first. If your property prices are going up, get involved and lobby to have your property tax rates cut immediately. Get involved with local government. Take your school boards back, take your local communities back. Go look at how much money is being spent in each of your communities. Break it down by the person. How much is each family being taxed? What does it look like compared to the other 5 communities around you? Folks, all this information is out there. You need to start looking at some of it for yourself. Some of this over time I'm going to be working on as well. I'm just telling you that it's super important that we basically deconstruct this massive problem and crowdsource it, and then we share these insights. So part of what I'm doing with the folks that have joined on is I'm going to share all these insights with the American people. If you go to Give, Send, Go, and it's Bobby Piton, I've raised I think the $37,000 there. I have 6 months of payroll for Edward Solomon. He's going to be working with me on all this stuff for voter stuff, and then other types of fraud that we're going to uncover. And that's his full-time job. It's not my full-time job. I'm just helping coordinate all this stuff, and then coordinating a few other people. I just want to be clear, folks. My core job and what I do day in, day out is pre-active investments. All this other stuff, that's my second job. I do at night. So I do this at night and on the weekends. And my wife has been extremely understanding because she realizes what's at stake if we don't get this fixed. And so, that's where we're at, folks. Do you drink a lot of coffee like Edward? Yeah, I do drink a lot of coffee. But I'm trying to cut back. But it seems to cut back for a couple of days and then go right back at it. So anyways, that's what's going on, folks. Markets seem to be somewhat stable today. Nothing crazy going on. And, like I said, look into some of this stuff for yourself. Live your values, invest your values, and I think the country will continue to be going back on the right trajectory it needs to be on. So I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I'll be on for day 101 of the greatest book ever written at 8:30 tonight, which is the Bible. I talk about the Bible in the context of what's happening in the world and why we need to go back to being God first, 10 Commandments, and U.S. Constitution. If we do those 3 things, we will take this country back, and God will continue to be on our side. If we don't do those things, I do think we're going to have really serious pain and problems ahead. Not that we haven't had enough already, but I think it could get much worse. So I hope you guys have a wonderful afternoon. God bless.